Hey, welcome to this episode where we'll take a look at Thief2 The Metal Age, the game that in a way bankrupted its legendary developer Looking Glass Studios. We'll be covering how to make the game work well on modern PCs, the backstory and lore, some interesting fan-made additions, how well it holds up against modern equivalents, and how modern stealth games are influenced by Thief. We'll also play through the first mission and examine the game's mechanics and features. So let's get started. The Steam version of the game works on modern PCs without any fiddling around, but I had some issues with the low resolution as it only supported 800 by 600 pixels and it looked seriously dated. I always want to experience older games as they were, so that's to say without any change to the look and feel of the game, but I want to play them on a higher resolution if possible. I used the Thief2 Fixer, which is an unofficial collection of patches and mods, but I didn't install anything else except the fix itself, which lets you play at a much higher resolution. The link is in the description if you want to check it out. We're not going to look at the intro to the game itself as it doesn't give you any information, so it's cool and all and sets the mood, but that's about it. Instead we'll check out the intro cinematic to the first level.
I've always equated feelings with getting caught. They both get in the way of my money. Unfortunately, not everyone is as committed to their work as I am. An old associate of mine, Basso the boxman, wants to marry Lady Rumford's chambermaid, Genevieve, and live happily ever after. Guess prison life spoiled his taste for thievery. Too bad for Basso that Lady Rumford has other plans. Marriage would void Genevieve's indentured service contract, so Rumford is keeping her confined in the estate with the rest of her worldly possessions. Basso has asked for my assistance on getting her out, since infiltration is my specialty. I make it a policy never to take a job so sentimental, but the Rumford Manor could be a lucrative opportunity for a man like me. It would also mean that Basso would owe me a favor, and in this line of work you can never have too many of those. I'll sneak in after dark and clear a path for Basso so he can rescue his damsel in distress. Along the way, I'll pick up a few souvenirs for the local pawn shops. That should make all this aggravation worthwhile. Otherwise, I'll make Basso wish he was still rotting in Crag's Cleft. This proves it. Going legit is more trouble than it's worth.
So yeah, that's the intro to the first mission. It doesn't really tell you much about the world or the Master Thief Garrett or anything from Thief 1, which seems kind of weird seeing as Thief 1 has a ton of lore and story. But in this regard, I have to recommend that you play Thief the Dark Project, so that's the first Thief game, to get fully immersed in this universe. But here's a quick recap. Garrett is a poor homeless kid growing up in the city. Yep, that's the name of the place. He gets caught trying to pickpocket a man who turns out to be a keeper, one of the three factions in the city. The man grabs Garrett and offers him a chance to join the Keepers, which he accepts. The Keepers teach him many things that helps when being a master thief, but they also try to indoctrinate him in their teaching and philosophy, and Garrett doesn't want any of that, so he leaves to go back to thieving. During one of his contracts for a client named Constantine, via a woman named Victoria, Garrett has to enter a cathedral to steal an artifact called the Eye, which has been sealed to imprison the Trickster, a devil-like supernatural being which the pagans worship. Garrett does what he has to complete the contract and return to his client, who turns out to be no other than the trickster himself. Victoria explains that the eye requires a flesh eye to work and restrains Garrett with magical vines and removes Garrett's right eye. Garrett later gets a mechanical eye from the Keepers. Things turn into a revenge story, and in the end, Garrett manages to defeat the trickster by switching out the eye with a fake one that kills him. Okay, back to Thief 2. The game wants to portray Garrett as nothing but a simple thief trying to make a living when he starts out in Thief 2. The first mission, which you saw the intro cinematic to, explains that he helps an old acquaintance, but mainly to get a favor from him later, and also to steal some valuables for himself while he's there. Garrett comes across as very cynical and not the classic good guy, but is very likable, and all the thieving can easily be forgiven, seeing as it's more of like a Robin Hood thing, steal from the rich and give it to himself kind of a thing. This is the shopping screen. On the first mission, this is not available to the player. All you get is your sword, a blackjack, 15 water arrows, and a bird call for letting Basso know when the coast is clear. On the other missions, you'll get to spend your ill-gotten gains on additional weapons and items if you want, but you're not able to sell any of your current items. Being an immersive sim, the game lets you complete the levels as you choose for the most part, so being able to customize your gear to fit your playstyle is very welcoming. It's also a nice incentive to search out more loot on each map. Note that items do not carry over from one mission to the next, and regarding loot, you only get to spend what you looted from the previous mission, not from any missions before that, even if you did not spend it. So there's no reason not to use all your cash when you visit the shop. Alright, back to the first mission here. It's called Running Interference. The objectives change with each difficulty settings, but we have to secure a path to Genevieve's cell, then escort Basso to her cell, which he'll lockpick. We'll then escort the two out of the mansion and into safety. Garrett knows Basso from the first Thief game, where he rescued him from prison. We'll play through the mission on both easy and expert and do a bit of comparing.
I sprung the lock on the side door for you, Garrett. It's the only good way in.
When playing the first mission on easy, you'll get some tutorial text as you progress, but Garrett will also make some comments on the surroundings.
Better check my map.
So this is Garrett's hand-drawn map of the area. It's pretty cool, and you can even make your own comments where you want on the map.
This must be the door Basso mentioned. Good thing the butler's out for the night. He left his lights on.
You can already hear how great the audio design is. I mean, it's still top-notch after all these years. I really like the way the tutorial is part of this mission. It's like teaching us how different surfaces make different sounds and that you need to stay in the shadows.
Oh, better stop and check out that light around the corner. This hallway is too well lit. Better put a water arrow into that torch.
Oh, damn torches. Always sputtering out.
Well, don't just make tap over it. Light it up.
I lost my tinderbox. Oh, why don't you do it?
I ain't the one that's complaining, am I now?
Huh.
Another guard up ahead. Time to knock him out while his back is turned.
Garrett has a lot of cool weapons and equipment, and you'll get your hands on more as the mission progresses. Here, you have to hide the bodies so the guards or civilians won't find them and raise the alarm. The AI was pretty good for its time, and it's still okay compared to modern day stealth games like the Dishonored series, in my opinion.
Hello? Show yourself.
So check it out, this is the kind of stuff we take for granted today, but it's cool how they try to make you feel like it's a real person moving around. Notice for instance how Garrett kinda limps when carrying the guard, so simulating weight and mass in a way.
Well, that's her door. Guess Basso can open it. He's not much of a sneak, but he can sure handle a lock.
That's it, just run back, get Basso, let Basso open the door, and follow them both out and you're done. You're free to explore before getting Basso, but let's check out the same mission on the expert difficulty level instead.
I sprung the lock on the side door for you, Garrett. It's the only good way in.
Okay, expert time. We have to steal a lot more loot to complete the level this time. This requires way more planning and exploration, so the map is key. See how you can make notes and remarks on the map, and it's actually very useful on later missions where you have to backtrack after reaching certain objectives. The room you're in lights up when you open the map. It's great for pinpointing your location and navigating the map. On the expert difficulty, there's no tutorial text, and Garrett makes far few remarks about his surroundings. Even loot or mission items are in different locations, which is pretty cool.
Good thing the butler's out for the night. He left his lights on.
Damn torches. Always sputtering out.
Well, don't just make tap over it. Light it up.
I lost my tinderbox. Oh, why don't you do
There's
it?
nothing of value in this room, just some power generators. But I like it since it's part of the world building of the steampunkish universe of Thief.
Whoa.
Remember, if you kill anyone, the mission fails, so the blackjack is your friend. Also, taking out guards makes it way easier to move about as you please. So there's quite a few secrets in each mission. Some are harder to spot than others. In this mission, there's even a secret objective, which we'll get to later. There's a civilian in here now, and he wasn't here on the easy difficulty. He can alert the guards if we're spotted, so we have to be very careful.
Hello? Anyone there?
It can be hard to tell how well hidden in the shadows you are, but the crystal at the bottom of the center of the screen helps a lot. There's even more secrets and loot to be found here. Thief rewards slow and methodical play, where you really explore every nook and cranny. The dumbwaiter makes way too much sound, and the guards really should notice it. The AI is pretty good, but not excellent, in other words. Food items can be found, and gives a small amount of health when consumed. Health potions are way more effective. This loot is almost impossible to spot, and a fun fact, on the expert difficulty there's a piece of loot stuck up there that can't be picked up. So when completing the level, you can never get all of the loot in the map.
Just because I've been here only a few months, think that I can just get away with pushing me around.
The banter of the guards can be pretty cool to listen to, but the quality of the voice actors varies greatly. This is another good example of world and lore building that Thief does. I'm not sure that Thief was the first, but later games certainly do the same. Think of the voice recordings in Bioshock, for instance. As you can see in the note, the city is quite chaotic, and Sheriff Truart is mentioned. You'll get to know him better as the game continues.
Well, that's her door. Guess Basso can open it. He's not much of a sneak, but he can sure handle a lock.
This time, we still need to get a lot more loot and knock up more guards before we get Basso. To me, this continues the trend that Duke Nukem 3D set in its time, which was creating believable worlds. Clearly, there's a bathroom or pool in the room above, and the room in the basement here underscores that in a nice way. This is how the physics worked in this area of PC gaming. It's pretty simple stuff, but it did the job. Exploration pays off, and here's another secret. And someone's been worshipping that cogwheel and didn't want anyone to notice. From a modern perspective, the environment shows a lack of interior details, so rooms look very basic. This, alongside very stiff animations and low character model polygons, definitely shows the game's age. Notice the change in the ambient music. It's really cool and atmospheric. And in here is the bathroom that we saw from below. It looks quite Romanesque. Don't drop anyone that's unconscious in the water. They'll drown and you'll fail the mission.
Strange noises.
I made it a habit not to have any weapons or items in hand, because all the weapons except the blackjack makes you more visible. If you're noticed sneaking around by someone, they'll attack you on sight and pursue you for a while if you flee. They'll try to activate any alarm if one is present. And you really don't want to get into a fight in this game. The combat is quite clunky and it's not that much fun, and also it's hard to beat even a guard one-on-one. I told you about the secret objectives earlier, and here it is. It's wedding rings for Basso and Genevieve. Pretty hard to find unless you search absolutely everywhere. AI is gonna AI, so we're able to knock out both of these guards without causing too much commotion. The last patrolling guard is walking around on a noisy surface, so it's the perfect time to try out one of our gadgets, the flash bomb.
I saw something.
This is the room where we took the dumbwaiter up and stole the key of the guard. We can't get in here without using a flash bomb, but resources are scarce, so we're just gonna leave him alone.
Nothing, I guess. Oh well.
Modern stealth games are way faster and more action-oriented than Thief. As you can see, there's quite a bit of waiting around, but I find that it only adds to the tension. Even in 2014's Thief reboot, you could swoop around and movement was faster in general. In the Dishonored series, you could blink around with teleportation. The one game that stands out to me as being very inspired by the mechanics of Thief is Alien Isolation. You're weak, stealth really is your only strength, and both games have excellent audio design.
Whose noise?
We've talked a bit about the AI in this game. It's okay, as I mentioned, but it would really benefit from more randomized guard behavior and patrol patterns. I don't think modern stealth games do this much better. It seems to be part of the game design to make it easier for the player to plan out their route. The later levels are much larger than this one, and guards have bigger patrol routes, which helps out a bit and makes it harder to predict when and where the guards will show up. The downside to this is that the larger maps are harder to navigate as most environments look alike. This was definitely a bigger problem in the first game, but it's somewhat prevalent in this one as well. The AI does other interesting things though. They may not care about an open door, but if they find blood splatter on the ground, they'll go into a state of alertness. You can use water arrows to clean up the mess you made. We're pretty much done with this mission, just getting the rest of the loot and escorting Basso and Genevieve out. We'll play this out in the background, but I want to talk a bit about other topics. First of all, I want to mention the other missions. I'm not going to spoil anything, and if you want to play Thief 2, I strongly recommend that you do. And a few of the missions you'll have to look forward to includes a large docking facility, an open city, well, it's open by the year 2000 standards, but it's still pretty big. And it also includes a visit to Garrett's home, a police station, a couple of mechanists' strongholds, a bank, and more. The story is quite good and the missions are well made. It'll take you about 30 hours to complete the game, but there's also a level editor called DromEd. Fans have done a lot of cool things with this, and it's the most revered creation would have to be a full campaign named Thief2X Shadows of the Metal Age. It features 13 missions, new cinematics, new voice acting, a new protagonist called Zaya, and more. I'll link to it in the description. Now let's move on to comparing modern games with Thief. When revisiting Thief 2, what modern comforts do we miss? Well, you could argue that superpowers or skill trees could have made the game even stronger. I personally would disagree, as this is more rooted in realism, even though it's set in a fantasy universe with supernatural events. What I really miss though is being able to peek through keyholes before entering a room. This is a staple of modern stealth games, and it would be a perfect fit for the old Thief games. One of Garrett's gadgets, namely the scouting orb, can accomplish this to a certain degree. He throws it on the ground and through his mechanical eye is able to use it as a remote camera. I would still prefer not to open the door and throw the thing in, and instead just peek through the keyhole. Another thing I really missed is being able to hide under certain objects like tables. It would give the player even more possibilities to traverse the maps like a ghost for those of you that don't want to be seen by the guards. Those things aside, I think Thief does something that its modern counterparts doesn't. It stands on its own as its own thing, but its legacy certainly can be seen in the video games following it. Thief 2 was released in the year 2000. What other games was released in that time period, and who was considered its rivals, and how well was the game received? Well, we'll start with the latter. I mentioned in the introduction that Thief in a way bankrupted its studio, Looking Glass Studios. The game was very well received and sold plenty of copies. The studio had some incredibly talented employees, including the famous Warren Spector and Ken Levine, and had basically spearheaded a new genre called immersive-sim, with games like Thief and System Shock. So how could this happen? Long story short, Looking Glass had taken it upon themselves not only to develop games, but also self-publish some of their games. This put a strain on their cash flow, and combined this with a few games that failed commercially, and the result was financial grievance. Thief 2 was commercially successful and could have kept the company running for a while longer, but the royalties came in too late from its publisher and bankruptcy was a fact. Now, what other games came out in the year 2000 that could rival Thief 2? Well, 2000 was a very good year for gamers. We saw other great titles like Diablo 2, Soldier of Fortune, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, Command & Conquer Red Alert 2, Deus Ex, Escape from Monkey Island, Project IGI, and more. The lineup of great titles makes Thief's success even more impressive, seeing as these were all great games that sold well. Graphically, Thief was among the weaker of the bunch, but it more than made up for this with the game's great design, atmosphere, sound design, story, and originality. So yeah, we've stolen most of the loot, knocked out a bunch of guards, and Basso is on his way to Genevieve. All in all, Thief 2 was and still is a great game worth playing even today. I'll wrap this up with a fun fact. If you're quick, you can get into Genevieve's cell before the door closes. On the table in the cell is a key that opens the cell. It was placed there in case the player got stuck and couldn't get out. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked this video. Any feedback is very much appreciated, so feel free to leave a comment.